When you picture Queen Victoria, you probably see that stern, older monarch draped in black. But that's really just a snapshot. Her story is so much bigger. It's about how an entire nation went from having this crumbling dynasty to becoming a global superpower. So let's get into how one woman's reign really did forge the world we know today. And that is the absolute heart of the matter, isn't it? Because when Victoria came to the throne, the monarchy wasn't just on the rocks, it was on the verge of completely falling apart. The whole institution was in crisis, and all they had was this 18-year-old girl to save it? Right. To really get Victoria's impact, you have to look at what she inherited. The Hanoverian kings, the ones right before her, had left the crown in absolute shambles. They were seen as just scandalous, wasteful, and totally out of touch with what life was like for regular people. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. It wasn't just a PR problem, it was a straight-up biological crisis. You had George III, whose reign ended in madness. Then his sons, George IV and William IV, well, neither of them managed to produce a legitimate heir. The entire royal line was basically teetering on the edge of extinction. So, this is what it all boiled down to, this contrast. On one side, you have the Hanoverians, scandalous, disconnected, with their authority just collapsing. And on the other, you have Victoria. She was a complete break from all that. For the public, she wasn't just a new face, she was a fresh start. She was a chance to give the monarchy a moral purpose again. It was the last chance for renewal. Exactly. But being a symbol is one thing. You've actually got to do something. Victoria had to actively start reshaping the monarchy. And this next part of the story is all about how she, with the help of a couple of key men in her life, started to build a totally new, modern vision for the crown. Okay, so first up, you have her prime minister, Lord Melbourne. He was basically her political mentor, showing her the ropes of statecraft. Then there's her marriage to Prince Albert, and this was so much more than a love story. It was a genuine power partnership. Albert was the one pushing this forward-looking vision, all about science and industry. And then there's the family itself. There are 9 kids married into royal families all over Europe, which is how she got that famous nickname, the Grandmother of Europe. And wow, this phrase just captures everything, doesn't it? The workshop of the world? This wasn't just some catchy tagline. It was a massive declaration. And Albert's huge achievement, the Great Exhibition of 1851, was the proof. It was like they threw a giant party and invited the whole world, just to show off that Britain was, without a doubt, the industrial and economic center of the universe. But all that industrial power, all that progress, it unleashed these massive forces that were reshaping the entire country. And what you end up with is an era of incredible, deep, and really unsettling contradictions. Think about it. All of a sudden, the country just shrank. You had railways and telegraphs connecting everyone and everything in a way that had never happened before. News, people, goods, they could all move at these unbelievable speeds. It was really the birth of a modern, interconnected society. Yeah, but there's always a price, right? And the human cost here was just staggering. While factory owners were making these incredible fortunes, the cities were exploding with a working class living in the most horrific poverty and squalor you can imagine. So you have these two worlds, wealth and misery, living literally side by side. So, how did they justify all this expansion across the globe? Well, it came down to this idea, the white man's burden. It basically framed their colonial rule not as a conquest for money and power, but as some kind of moral duty to go out and civilize other nations. It was the philosophical engine that powered the empire, hiding a lot of exploitation behind a mask of goodwill. And at the exact same time, there was another huge battle going on, but this one was for the soul of the country. On one side, you've got the certainty of science, especially with Darwin's On the Origin of Species. But his ideas smashed right into the biblical story of creation, which kicked off this massive crisis of faith and a deep, deep cultural anxiety. Right. And as Victoria's reign just went on and on for decades, she became more than a queen. She was the living symbol of the entire age. And once again, her own personal life was about to define the public image of the monarchy. I mean, losing Albert in 1861, it just broke her. She completely vanished from public life for years, just lost in this deep grief she never really got over. Her absence went on for so long that people started to seriously question if they even needed a monarchy anymore. But then she comes back for her jubilees and wow, she's transformed into this celebrated icon, the matriarch of the whole empire. Her death in 1901 wasn't just the end of a life, It was the end of an era. So, when you step back and look at it all, what did this era actually leave us with? Well, it's this huge paradox. On the plus side, we got things like modern global finance, English as a world language, and real steps toward democracy. But the negative column is just as powerful. The deep scars of colonialism and colorism, social inequalities that we are still wrestling with today, and the ideologies that were used to justify building an empire. Which really leaves us with one final huge thought. There's no question the Victorians built the foundations of our modern world, for good and for ill. The crucial question for us today is how much of our world is still being shaped by the long shadow of their ambitions, their inventions, and all their contradictions?